Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm First Alert meteorologist Jillian Johnson. It's been an extremely wet month across the Lone Star State. We finally dried out and warmed up last week, but that only came after more flooding rain. Amounts of heavy rain caused river levels to rise once again. Additional flood watches were issued last weekend at the start of the past work week for areas already impacted by those devastating floods around Independence Day weekend. Many rivers in the hill country and also across parts of central Texas reached moderate to major flood stages as the heavy rain fell. You're looking at video of the many raging rivers across Texas. Many Texans along riverbanks were asked to evacuate yet again. Rising floodwaters also caused numerous roads to close, but that didn't prevent some from driving over the flooded roadways, which led to many swift water rescues across the state earlier in the week. And because of the additional rounds of flooding rains early last week, the search for the victims of the 4th of July disaster was put on hold. CBS's News' Jason Allen has been in hard-hit Kerrville and has more on how the recovery mission has been impacted by the rounds of flash floods.
Water submerged roadways and overwhelmed rivers in Texas Monday, forcing volunteers searching for bodies from July 4th's flash floods in central Texas to evacuate to higher ground.
We cannot afford to have people in the water and right next to the water that are not swift water rescue trained and capable of at least saving themselves from being near that water.
Nearly 100 people are reported missing along the Guadalupe River.
We don't know where they are. We don't know how many we lost. We've heard accounts of trailer after trailer after trailer being swept into the river with families in them. Can't find the trailers.
This is what Penny Dupree's Hunt, Texas neighborhood used to look like. Now rubble is all that's left behind of the place she and her family gathered for nearly 2 decades, including on July 4th when it was flooded.
When I saw that water coming through the front door, it looked like an ocean to me.
Dupree and her 8 family members climbed to a loft, but rising water forced the group to break through the wall. Dupree's kids helped her swim onto the roof.
You don't think about anything. You just do.
You just react.
Yep. And our families are pretty good at, hanging together. They could have left the old lady there if they wanted to.
They were not going to do that.
They were not going to do
that.
We spoke to Dupree's family earlier this week.
And we're blessed, right? We have a tight-knit family.
But family's the most important thing in my life, and God and family. That's what gets you through.
And those are, that's what the flood did not take away.
No, it didn't.
The sheriff here told county leaders they have at least another month, maybe 2, of hard work out here, but that they could be looking for victims for the next 6 months. Jason Allen, CBS News in Kerrville, Texas.
First Alert meteorologist Sean Bellafury now joins us for a look at all the rainfall numbers and the records broken for the month of July. Sean.
The unprecedented July rainfall across not only central Texas, but across much of the Lone Star State has brought devastation, especially to the hill country and, of course, near the Guadalupe River. I wanted to take a look back in time and show you some of the numbers and how things kind of compare to other historical months and take a look at what may be happening for the second half of the month of July. This is a 3-day rainfall total from the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th across Kerr County, where over 10 inches of rain fell during that period of time. But believe it or not, even though there were some very high rainfall totals down in Kerr County and across much of the hill country, some of the highest totals was actually right here in central Texas. Across the state, believe it or not, this is a 30-day rainfall estimation going from the 17th of June up to the 17th of July, and along and west of I-35 where we see these purples and kind of these bluish colors, that is anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of rain. Some of the highest totals across parts of San Saba County, Lampasas, Coryell County, and also into Hamilton and Bosque County too. So how does this rain match up with what we should normally see during this time of year? Well, of course, July is supposed to be a very dry month. This is a look at the percentage of normal for that same time period. So 100% would be exactly the amount of rain we should have received. But along and especially west of I-35, we saw rainfall totals levels that were 300 to over 600% of normal. That is 6 times more than normal. And across parts of Hamilton County, we're actually close to about 650% more rain than we should expect during that time period. The month of July has been exceptionally rainy, 6.27 inches, the 7th rainiest July so far. We're only supposed to receive about 1.82 inches, and of course we have eclipsed that. Now these numbers are for the Waco Airport, where all the records are kept, but just like I showed you, much higher totals west of I-35. We are top dog for the first half of the month, the rainiest starts to July in history. And that number, 6.27, actually really stands out. If we were to take that number and kind of move it across other months here in Central Texas, that amount of rain would be a top 10 rainiest month in 6 other months, not including the month of July. And of course, with all of that rain, we have not seen a lot of hot temperatures. Average high of 90.8 degrees, which is well below normal. But as we move towards the end of the month, we are expecting a lot of warmth to build across the United States. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafiore, KWTX News 10.
While all of that rainfall caused the catastrophic damage and unfathomable amount of loss, it has significantly improved drought conditions across the state. Back in the beginning of July, nearly 6% of the state was under level 5 exceptional drought and 13% under level 4 extreme. You can tell that the northern and eastern parts of the state saw rain before the summer, which is why there was no ongoing drought at the start of the month. Taking a closer look at the worst of the drought in Texas, you can see from Kerrville down to San Antonio and areas to the west is where the exceptional drought was. But after the flooding rains around the 4th of July, we saw major improvement to some of those under level 4 and 5 drought. Near Kerrville, they managed to drop 2 to 3 levels in drought with all of the rain that fell, but there was still need for more rain to erase the drought. The bigger picture across the state shows that on July 10th, only 4% of Texas was under exceptional drought and 10% was under extreme drought. Now to the latest drought monitor issued on the 17th. Thanks to even more rain, we continue to see significant improvements to the drought monitor. Across the state, exceptional drought conditions remain in place across the Big Bend region, which is why 4% of the state remains under level 5 drought. But now 8% is under extreme drought. And again, because of the rain last weekend and at the start of the work week in Central Texas and the Hill Country, drought conditions continue to improve. Our capital city is no longer under any drought, which hasn't been the story in nearly 5 years. And we saw drought levels lower once more for areas around Kerrville and across the Hill Country. There's still plenty of rainfall needed across areas near and west of San Antonio before their drought conditions go away. And here at home in our part of Central Texas, we have thankfully not had any level of drought in place throughout the month of July. Not only did we see improvements to the drought across the state, but we also saw improvements to lake levels. Here's the First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor, who has more on some of the record levels rivers got up to during the historic rainfall earlier this month and how it impacted lake levels downstream.
Well, we had 2 significant flood events along the San Saba River, and both of these ended up being very significant events. Let's show you what the river gauge showed. We had one event over the 4th of July weekend, a second one the following weekend, and both of those making into the top 10 list of highest crests that we've ever seen along the San Saba River. The 4th of July weekend, 4th highest crest on record. The following weekend, the 6th highest, and we had a ton of water working its way down the San Saba River. That first event had 890,000 gallons per second of water moving down the river. Put in perspective, you can fill up an Olympic-sized swimming pool with 660,000 gallons, so more than an Olympic-sized swimming pool worth of water per second moving down the river. The second round, not quite as much, but still over 200,000 gallons of water per second. All this water fed into the Colorado River. You can see those 2 significant crests. First one over the 4th of July weekend ended up being the 4th highest the Colorado River's ever been at that river gauge near San Saba. And all of this water feeds its way down the Colorado River into Lake Buchanan. This is video from the LCRA showing them opening up the floodgates, letting water out of the dam at Lake Buchanan. You're probably wondering, why is that a big deal? First time that they've been able to allow water out of Lake Buchanan in 6 years. Lake Buchanan, a very important lake. It holds a lot of water. You can take all the water in Lake Waco, Belton, and Stillhouse Hollow. That doesn't equal how much water is in Lake Buchanan when it's completely full. It also feeds a lot of water further down the Colorado River. Eventually, ending up in Lake Travis. So Lake Buchanan a month ago was sitting at 61% full. It's now 100%, allowing water to flow more down the Colorado River. And speaking of Lake Travis, a month ago was at 45% full. It's currently at 88% full, and those levels continue to go up as this water works its way down the Colorado River.
As you just saw from Brady, right here in central Texas, there are several major river systems. When heavy rain falls, water levels in our lakes and rivers rise fast, which causes flooding. In this week's Degrees of Science, Brady sat down and talked with a hydrologist that's in charge of forecasting river flooding across the state. Here's a listen into their conversation.
When we talk about river flooding, which is a lot, which I'll do, for the viewer out there, what's the difference between more flash flooding and the river flooding that you are trying to forecast for?
It's an area that overlaps. The easiest way is that if it is associated with the river rising, that is river flooding. Heavy rain can produce flash flooding, can overwhelm storm drainage, and can produce aerial flooding. That is a short term. Eventually it makes its way to the river, and then the river starts rising. So the weather forecast offices across the nation, including the National Weather Service here in Fort Worth, they will issue flash flood warnings and those type of products to cover the short term and the aerial. But once it gets to a river system, we call it riverine flooding, then it falls, the calculations fall under the River Forecast Center, and we provide guidance so that our weather offices can issue more products that are more fine-tuned and detailed to help people make decisions.
What kind of advice would you give people when it comes to flood safety and preparedness and what to do when we go through something like that?
The first one, don't underestimate the power of water. I know this sounds kind of vague, but most of our stats show that we could probably eliminate half of our flood-related fatalities if we could keep people from driving through flooded roadways. But, you know, water's got a lot of heaviness to it, and when it's moving, it's got a lot of force to it. And you may think that you've got a big vehicle and can drive around it, but what I tell everyone, it doesn't matter how big your vehicle is. When you drive a vehicle into a flooded roadway and you lose contact and you start floating, you don't have a rudder, you don't have an engine, and you're at the mercy of the water. And if we could just get that, there's probably half of our flood-related fatalities. The rest is if you know your flood risk and you hear a flood warning, the Weather Service has determined that's a life-threatening situation. Take the appropriate action, and the appropriate action is get to higher ground.
To learn more about the science of hydrology and what goes into forecasting river flooding, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube or go to KWTX.com/Degrees of Science. Weather Extra will be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. If you've been thinking that the summer of 2025 has been filled with reports of flooding across the nation, well, you'd be exactly right. This year, the National Weather Service has issued more flood warnings than any other year on record since 1986, according to data from Iowa State University. There's been 3,045 flood warnings issued so far in the nation in 2025. That number eclipses the 3,033 warnings issued in all of 1998. This month alone, there's been several back-to-back record-breaking flooding events across the country, including the devastating flooding right here in Texas, but also in states like North Carolina, Illinois, and New Mexico, and also across parts of the Northeast, many of which have been deadly. And many experts say a combination of factors are contributing to the intense rainfall and deadly flooding. Michael Yoshida joins us with more on what's behind the seemingly non-stop weather events that we've been seeing throughout the month of July.
Heavy rain and deadly flash flooding putting communities across the United States underwater.
It feels like events like last night, again, not just in New Jersey, but as a general matter, are coming more frequently with more intensity.
Summer is flash flood season, when intense daytime heat can fuel thunderstorms and warm air can hold more moisture. But experts say these recent events were more significant for several reasons. Along with high daytime temperatures in parts of the country, we've also seen record levels of atmospheric moisture, which helped drive heavy rainfall that led to deadly flooding in Texas and North Carolina. Summer storms also tend to move more slowly or even stall due to winds in the upper atmosphere being weaker.
And as a result, just deluging places that are not designed to handle that amount of precipitation in that short a period of time.
Recent wildfires also causing problems in areas like Ruidoso, New Mexico, burning away vegetation, and in some areas the fire's extreme heat changing the soil's natural ability to absorb and slow down rainwater. Droughts can have a similar effect too, something we saw amplify deadly flooding in Texas. Urban areas are not immune either, where asphalt pavement and older drain systems can be overrun.
There is a growing recognition in financial markets, in the scientific community, and starting in infrastructure planning, that we are dealing with a much different beast in terms of the weather patterns that we're experiencing, and things have to change.
In Washington, Michael Yoshida reporting.
Hundreds of volunteers have made their way out to the Texas Hill Country to search for those missing. And up next on Weather Extra, we learn more about the four-legged members helping bring loved ones closure. Welcome back to Weather Extra. San Francisco first responders have been deployed to Texas to assist with disaster recovery. And joining that group of first responders is a FEMA-certified K9 trained to detect live human scent.
So my dog is alerting on live human scent.
All it takes is mere seconds for Kylo, a 6-year-old Labrador retriever, to find a live human trapped in piles of debris. Kylo is a FEMA-certified Type 1 disaster dog, trained to detect live human scent.
As you can see, these rubble piles are very technical, they're very dangerous, things move, and the dogs have to have very, very high strength and agility and drive to continue to do this work.
Brandon Bond, a K9 search specialist with the California Urban Search and Rescue Team Task Force 3, is Kylo's handler.
You ready? Go search.
He has been training him since Kylo was 8 weeks old.
It's always been a drive and a passion to me to serve my fellow citizens. I became a firefighter EMT when I was 19 years old and have worked in various lanes within emergency services.
Bond is also the emergency manager for the city of Menlo Park. He and Kylo are a part of a rigorous team of first responders making up this FEMA task force.
Search and rescue, shut up if you can hear me.
And under this group, 6 local first responders and 2 Labradors have been deployed to Texas.
One of the first things that they needed to do was acclimate the dogs to the weather. It's 95 degrees, humidity, and they're working in very, very difficult terrain along the riverbank where you have the debris flows, mud, etc.
While Kylo is trained to detect live human scent, the 2 K9s on the grounds in Texas detect human remains.
The sooner we get this search and rescue portion done, then the rebuilding and the real recovery can start taking place.
Deputy Fire Chief Dan Coyle of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District says his agency is a sponsor of one of 8 FEMA teams in California. Their firefighters are working around the clock in Texas to help families find their loved ones.
Eventually, many of these incidents that we end up going to have passed the rescue stage and are in the recovery stage. And so we understand the work is difficult, and it's important, though, to try to give whatever sense of closure, if that's even possible, to the families that may have lost people.
And K9s like Kylo are there to help. He has been trained to find the strongest source of live human scent that they cannot access. So I hid myself in some debris, away from Kylo's view. And within seconds, he found me.
And then when they hit that, they're trained to do what's called a focused bark alert, where they will sit here and bark, 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 bark until the handler can get to the dog, reward the dog, and then mark that location, so then the search team can then start the heavy rescue side of things.
K9s like Kylo are critical to helping save a life and helping families with answers. And it's this collaborative effort of human and dog, fueled by the passion to serve, that makes all the difference during times of devastating natural disasters.
If you're looking for a way to lend a hand and support flood relief efforts across the state, Gray Media has partnered with the Salvation Army for the Together for Texas initiative. Take out your phone and scan the QR code on your screen, and you can donate online there. And up next on Weather Extra, out across the desert southwest, the heat and lack of rainfall is causing a cactus crisis. More on this story right after the break. Welcome back to Weather Extra. We've covered the devastating flooding across the nation, but concern is also growing out west. Chris Van Cleve shows us how an enduring symbol of the American Southwest is struggling to survive.
Everybody wants to get their picture taken with the saguaro cactus.
They are the main attraction.
they are without a doubt the main attraction.
John Garule from Scottsdale Adventure Tours makes his living off the Sonoran Desert, where the saguaro cactus has thrived for centuries. Some of them are well over 100 years old. But now parts of the Arizona desert are getting too hot for these cactuses.
Just within the last year on this trail that we take, I've noticed 2 of them that have actually been blown over. And to me, that's highly unusual.
What goes through your mind when you see that?
But it's always concern that, you see that maybe it's something bigger. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see them and see that it looks like they're melting.
The already arid Southwest has gotten drier over the last 20 years. Starting in 2020, parts of Arizona have seen extended periods of record-breaking heat. 110-degree temperatures lasting for weeks on end are causing the hardy saguaro to drop dead from what amounts to heat stroke. Over the last 5 years, researchers have noticed the death rates of saguaros in the Phoenix area have jumped from 1 to 2% a year to closer to 7%, far faster than a cactus reproduces. And to replace a saguaro like this one can take a century or more.
It starts to feel a bit like a graveyard.
It's a little bit like that, yes. When you see
Scientist Kevin Hulteen has been studying the cactuses for 14 years.
We are undoubtedly going to be seeing more and more of these kinds of graveyard conditions as the rest of the desert continues to get warmer and warmer.
Researchers say studying the saguaro's response to heat is challenging in part because the cactuses grow very slowly.
They're not going to disappear completely. But in terms of trying to improve their chances, it really is partly up to us.
So his team at the Desert Botanical Garden is working to identify the most resilient varieties, saguaros best suited to withstand a hotter, drier Arizona.
Are we looking at the future saguaro cactus for Phoenix here?
Potentially, yes. Hopefully. That's the idea.
Some of these seedlings will end up in the Tonto National Forest. It will take decades for them to grow and will likely require a symbol of the Old West to find new strength to survive. For Eye on America, I'm Chris Van Cleve, outside Scottsdale, Arizona.
That's all we have for you for Weather Extra this week. We'll see you right back here next weekend. Have a great week.